A man named Will was shocked when his daughter openly declared her love to her lover right in front of him. This happens at the beginning of the film. One night, Will suddenly woke up from his sleep. As he sat up in bed, he heard a deep voice coming from the next room saying just one word, yes. Will lay back down and tried to sleep again, but he couldn't fall asleep. The next morning, Will's eldest daughter Allison was busy preparing for her father's upcoming birthday. Everything was bustling with activity. Meanwhile, Will stepped outside the house and Allison started telling him about the birthday preparations. But Will was a businessman, and since he had been troubled since the night before, he didn't say much to his daughter. Soon after, his younger daughter Susan, who was a doctor, came to meet him. After a while, Will's two partners, True and Quinn, arrived to see him. Quinn was married to his eldest daughter, Allison. Actually, Will had 3 daughters. Will was the founder and chairman of a news agency in Paris, and today he had an important meeting with another big news agency whose owner could bring him millions in profit. Will was always a man who looked out for his own benefit, so he decided to leave his own birthday celebrations to go to Paris. All 3 helicopters set off towards the city for the meeting. Susan also went with him because she was heading to her hospital. After reaching the city, the 3 proceeded to their meeting, but before going to her hospital, Susan stopped by a coffee shop. There, Susan met a man who had just recently come to the city. He was speaking to her very professionally, and Susan listened with great interest. However, she didn't want the man to be attracted to her, so although inwardly she felt drawn to him, outwardly she kept up a cool demeanor. The man fell in love with Susan at first sight. He kept talking continuously, which made Susan laugh at his words. They spent quite some time talking in the coffee shop. When Susan was about to leave, the man confessed his love to her. Although Susan liked him too, she didn't want to express her feelings so quickly. After that, they parted ways, but neither had yet told the other their name. The man stood there watching Susan leave, but then he had an accident. Meanwhile, after finishing his meeting, Will returned to his office. Suddenly, he felt very unwell. A sharp pain shot through his chest, and he could barely breathe. Then again, he heard that same voice saying one word, yes. Will thought he was going to die. But then the chest pain stopped suddenly, and the voice also disappeared. In the evening, when Will sat down for dinner, he again heard the voice saying yes in his mind. Will felt that maybe someone was standing at the door calling him. At the table, Will's elder daughter Allison, Quinn, and True were also present, but none of them heard what Will had just heard. Will asked his maid to check outside the door. When the maid came back, she told him that there was a man outside, but she had just brought him inside the library. Hearing this, Will immediately went to meet him in the library. But when he arrived there, no one was visible. Will got angry and shouted, "Is this some kind of joke?" But that voice told Will to be quiet and repeated yes again. This time Will asked what this yes meant. The voice replied that yes was the answer to his question. Will said, "But I didn't ask any question." The voice told him to think carefully and answer. Will thought deeply and then said, "Am I going to die?" As soon as he said this, a man emerged from the cupboard, a man who had just met with an accident. The man came in front of him and said he was Yemerich, the god of death, and had come to take him. Hearing this, Will was convinced that the man had really come to take him. Will understood that his end time had come. He became very sad immediately, but the death messenger told Will that before taking him away, he wanted to stay here for a few days to learn about human lifestyle. For this, he wanted Will to be his guide. In exchange, he offered Will that for every moment he spends among humans, he would be given that much extra time to live. Meanwhile, Will's maid came to call him for dinner. The death messenger also told him to come along. At first, Will refused, but the death messenger warned him that if he refused, it would mean he would die soon. Will understood that he had to do whatever the death messenger said. So he took him along and reached the dinner table where Allison, True, and Quinn were present. At first, Will did not know what to say about this man to his family, but he introduced him as his friend and gave his name as Joe Black. Everyone was surprised to see this unknown friend of Will. After a while, Susan came home, and upon seeing the death messenger, she was the most shocked. She told everyone that she had met him earlier that morning in a shop, but Joe Black had looked at her like a stranger, which made Susan even more upset. After dinner, Will met Joe Black alone and asked him why he had met Susan. Joe Black said that to live among humans, he needed a body, and Susan had just met the man whose body Joe Black had taken. After that, Will showed Joe Black his room and went away. But the death messenger, who did not feel sleepy, went to see the swimming pool inside the house. Susan was bathing in the pool, and when she saw Joe Black, she came out. Susan said, "You talked to me a lot in the shop. Then what happened in just one day that you insulted me in front of everyone?" Joe Black replied that he had no such intention and was just trying to understand people by staying among them. Susan had already fallen in love with him at their first meeting, so she listened to everything he said like a crazy admirer. But when she could not tolerate it anymore, she said goodnight and went to her room. The next morning, when Will was about to leave for work, he took Joe Black with him. Will walked him around the city and took him to his company. Upon reaching there, Will told Joe Black to wait outside because an important meeting was going on inside. But Joe Black went inside with him and immediately asked for tea in front of everyone. True got annoyed seeing Joe Black in the meeting with Will and started insulting him casually. After the meeting began, True started talking about Will since he was Will's business partner. Will was planning to merge his company with True's. Everyone in the room was agreeing with what True said, assuming Will would eventually agree too. But Will was already troubled, and he clearly refused to go along with True's proposal. He was the owner of a truthful news channel. He said that while merging with another news company might bring a lot of profit, most of the company's control would go into True's hands, and he feared they might not show the truth to the public anymore. Saying this, he rejected the offer and walked out before the meeting even ended. After the meeting, Will was extremely upset. He told Joe Black to leave him alone for a while. He gave him some money and told him to explore the city on his own. Joe Black then went to meet Susan at her hospital. Susan was very happy to see him there. The angel of death, now in human form, had started to feel emotions for Susan. When Joe returned home, he asked Will about his wife, how much he loved her, and how they met for the first time. Talking about his wife made Will very sad because she was no longer alive. He had always felt an emptiness inside him, and it seemed like only death would finally end that void. Joe Black listened carefully to everything Will said. Just then, True came again to try and convince Will one more time, but Will flat out refused. He said he would never let anyone use his company for their own personal gain. After True left, Joe Black asked Will why he was so attached to his company. Will explained that he had dedicated his whole life to building it, and through his work, he had earned a name for himself in the world, a name he didn't want to lose. Later, Quinn came to Will and assured him that he would always stand by his side. He also had an idea about a new business partner for the company. But Will, now tired of it all, said that Joe Black would handle things from now on because Will knew he would die by next week. Still, Will went to Joe to ask about the company, but Joe didn't know anything about business. That night at dinner, Will tried to say some heartfelt words to his family, but couldn't say much. He just wanted to spend the little time he had left with his two daughters. So Will said that he wanted to have dinner with everyone again tomorrow. Hearing this, both his daughters were very happy. After many years, they were going to have dinner with their father again. Will had always been a very busy man. After dinner, Susan asked Joe who he really was and what he was doing with her father. But Joe didn't respond. Susan then said, "If you have some secret reason and don't want to tell me, that's fine, but I love you." The next day, True called Quinn and several others to a secret meeting where he tried to turn them against Will. He used the information given to Quinn as a weapon and claimed that Will was only acting on Joe's orders. He said, "All of you have a stake in this company too. If you all unite, Will have no choice but to accept the deal." That night at dinner, Will's daughter Allison brought a bunch of cakes for him and asked him to taste them. She wanted to know which one he liked most so she could serve it at his birthday party. But Will didn't even know if he'd live long enough to see his next birthday. Feeling hopeless, he said he didn't like cakes or parties at all. Hearing this, Allison started crying. Seeing her like that, Will deeply regretted what he had said. To make her feel better, he picked up a piece of cake and started eating it. He acted like the cake was incredibly delicious, just to bring a smile to her face. After dinner, Susan took Joe Black to tour her father's library. While walking around, Joe Black said he liked her scent. Impressed by his words, Susan began to kiss him. This was the first time Joe Black realized that Will had seen them talking. Will felt very bad. The next day, Joe Black went with Will to his company. Inside, an important meeting was going on without Will's prior knowledge. During the meeting, True was again trying to convince Will. Seeing this, Will got angry and said he would not accept the deal. True said, "Fine, all the members have the right to know why Will is doing this, who this man named Joe Black is, and why Will listens to him." At True's insistence, Will was forced to make all decisions. Will was speechless hearing this. True then asked all the board members present to ask Will to step down as chairman. Will lost his chair and became just a regular board member. Seeing all this, Joe Black felt very bad. Before leaving, he told True that when the time was right, he would reveal the true relationship he had with Will. Quinn got very angry at True. He said, "I told you what Will said, but I didn't know you'd betray him like this." True laughed at Quinn, thinking he was just acting. Considering Quinn one of his own men, True shared a secret with him. Quinn then realized that True had betrayed all of them. Meanwhile, Susan and Joe Black spent a lot of time together at home. But again, Will's eyes fell on them. Will angrily came to Joe Black and said to stay away from his daughter, to only care about him, Will, and not involve his daughter in this, to have a relationship only with Will. Seeing Will's anger, Joe Black calmly advised advised him to think carefully before speaking to him because he knew very well who he was talking to. With that, Joe Black went to meet Susan at the hospital, but found out she hadn't come that day. At home, Will tried to explain to his daughter that he didn't like her meeting Joe Black. When Susan asked why, Will didn't give a clear answer, but said that Joe Black would leave soon. That night, Joe Black came to Will and told him that after tomorrow's party, he would take him away from here. Will replied fearlessly, "I'm ready." It was Will's birthday party that night. At the same time, Quinn was busy drinking. Joe Black approached him. Quinn was full of regret, crying and saying, "I put Will in this condition. I was the one who told True everything. Because of me, Will lost his chair." Hearing this, Joe Black told him to apologize to Will, assuring him that Will would surely forgive him. Encouraged by Joe, Quinn went to Will, told him the whole truth, and asked for forgiveness. Will forgave him. When Will said he needed to talk to True, Quinn went to fetch him. Meanwhile, at the party, Susan met Joe Black and said, "I know you're planning to leave me." Joe Black explained that he didn't want to leave her either, but he had to go. He told her she didn't know much about him, but Susan said she wanted to stay with Joe Black. Hearing this, Joe hugged her and suddenly became thoughtful. Later, Joe Black told Will, "I love Susan, and tonight I'm taking her with me because she loves me and wants to stay with me." Hearing this, Will's worry increased because he couldn't bear to see his daughter die before his eyes. After much argument, Will finally asked, "Does Susan know your truth? Does she know where you're taking her?" Joe went silent. Black agreed and went to see Susan again. He kissed her hand and was about to tell her when Susan interrupted him. She said she was remembering their first meeting when they had met in that shop many times. She had fallen in love with him at first sight. At that moment, Joe Black realized that she was not in love with him, but with a body he was using. Now, he hugged her and gave her a feeling so strong that Susan started trembling. Then, Joe Black hugged her one last time and told her that the man she had first met in the shop would always be with her. After saying this, he suddenly left and went back to Will to tell him to get ready after the party. He told Will that both of them would be leaving. Hearing this, Will felt happy. Just then, Quinn arrived and said that True's helicopter would arrive in 2 minutes. Hearing this, Will put all the members on a conference call. When True arrived, Will spoke harshly to him. He thought True would angrily reveal everything himself, but True was no novice and Will's plan failed. Then Joe Black came and said, "Tonight I will tell you who I really am." Joe Black revealed that he was a tax department agent who had been gathering evidence of tax evasion. He had been helping Will in secret, hiding his real identity. In the evidence, Joe Black said he had found out that True planned to join with another company to destroy Will's company. Hearing this, True said he would talk to his lawyer. Then both Joe Black and Will said, "If you confess your crimes, you can avoid going to jail." True agreed and said he would resign when he arrived at the company. But then the board members overheard this conversation on the phone and announced that True's resignation was accepted. Thus, Will regained his position, and the board members made him chairman again. After this, Will happily went to the party with Joe. He cut the cake and gave a small speech, then hugged his daughter Allison. Susan was crying because her love was now leaving her. Meanwhile, Joe was standing in the garden, crying because he was losing Susan's love. The party ended. Will met Joe, and they prepared to leave. As they were leaving the party, Susan saw them and ran towards them, but by the time she got there, they had disappeared. Then Joe returned. Susan asked, "Where did you go?" Joe was silent for a moment, and then said, "I only remember that we met many times in the shop." He told her that her father's angel of death had come to take him away. Hearing this, Susan started crying. Both of them then walked back toward the party.